To my friends in the USA and the UK, if you crave stories that deconstruct the myths of the Old West and deliver twists that leave you breathless, you are in the right place. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell. Don't miss the tales that the history books were too afraid to print. Silas Thorne was a man carved from granite and cured in tobacco smoke. At 45, he owned half the grazing land in Wyoming, a kingdom of dust, cattle, and silence. But silence is a heavy thing to carry alone. Silas was a traditionalist, a man who believed that wealth bought the right to perfection. He didn't want a partner, he wanted a project. He sent word to the agencies in the East with a specific, expensive request. He wanted a bride of absolute innocence, someone untouched by the grit of the world, someone he could mold into the Queen of Thorn Ranch. When the stagecoach pulled up, Elena arrived. She was dressed in high-collared white lace, her eyes cast downward, her hands trembling as she held a small, leather-bound Bible. To Silas, she looked like a porcelain doll dropped into a dirt patch. He felt a surge of predatory pride. He had paid her father's debts, and in return, he expected a submissive slate he could write his own name upon. The wedding was a brief, legal affair in town. By the time they reached the ranch house, the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and dried blood. Silas poured himself a whiskey, watching Elena stand by the hearth. She hadn't spoken more than 10 words. He liked that. He liked the idea of being the first man to hear her scream, the first to see her cry, the first to break the stillness of her spirit. Upstairs, he grunted, finishing his drink. The bedroom was cold. Silas stripped off his gun belt, a heavy leather strap that held a Colt .45, and laid it on the nightstand. He turned to see Elena sitting on the edge of the bed. She wasn't shaking anymore. In fact, she was staring at the gun with a strange, clinical intensity. "You know what's expected of you, girl?" Silas asked, his voice a low growl. He began unbuttoning his shirt, his barrel chest scarred from years of breaking horses and men. Elena looked up. The innocence he had paid for was gone. Her eyes weren't wide with fear, they were sharp, like flint. "I know exactly what is expected, Silas. But I wonder, do you know what you've actually invited into your home?" Silas froze, one boot half off. "What are you talking about?" Elena stood up. She didn't move like a shy virgin, she moved like a predator. She reached into the folds of her heavy white petticoats. Silas expected her to pull out a lace handkerchief. Instead, she produced a slender, blackened derringer, its twin barrels pointed directly at his throat. "The agency told you I was from a convent in Boston," she said, her voice dropping an octave, losing its soft lilt. "They didn't tell you I spent the last 3 years in a Pinkerton cell, learning how to track men who think their money makes them invisible." Silas lunged for his Colt, but he was slow, the whiskey and his own arrogance had dulled his edges. Elena didn't fire. She kicked the nightstand, sending his gun skittering across the floor. In one fluid motion, she stepped into his space, the small pistol pressed against the soft skin beneath his jaw. "The innocence you bought was a lie, Silas. I'm not here to be your bride. I'm here because 12 years ago, you and the Thorn Raiders burned a settlement in the valley. You left a 10-year-old girl in a root cellar while you executed her parents for their land deeds." Silas felt the blood drain from his face. The memory, buried under a decade of prosperity, clawed its way back. That was war. Business. It was murder, she whispered. "And tonight, the innocence you wanted is going to teach you how it feels to be helpless." She didn't kill him then. Instead, she forced him to sit. She pulled a set of iron shackles from her trunk, the very trunk he had carried up the stairs for her. She chained him to his own bed frame. "You wanted a first night you'd never forget," Elena said, blowing out the candle. "Now, let's talk about where you buried the gold you stole from the valley families. By dawn, you'll either be a poor man in a jail cell, or a dead man in a shallow grave. Your choice, cowboy." Silas Thorne, the king of the Wyoming dust, shivered in the dark. He had looked for a lamb to slaughter, but he had opened his door to the shearer. The hunter was now the prey, and the night was only just beginning.